Hi, Anna. We're going to take a look at your 5 characteristics posting, give you a little bit of feedback, let you know what my observations are. And so we will share some screen and jump right into it. Okay, move ourselves over here. And first thing I do is kind of do an overview, look at your posting, see how that looks. Did you organize things in a way that is easy to navigate in the order that we want them to be in: direction, intensity, temperature, contrast, hardness? That creates the very handy acronym of DITCH, but it's also the order in which you typically would address them in. So it's not arbitrary. It's not just to fit them into the acronym. You actually do address them in that order when you're solving the puzzle of lighting. So let's see, we've got direction. Oh, I do see you have your timestamp there. We'll have you, I'll show you how to get rid of that as we move forward. I didn't realize you had that set on your camera. It's a pretty easy thing to get rid of in the future. That way it won't be this little orange thing on all your photos. I'm sure you probably don't want that. Or maybe you do want it. You kind of have a quirky signature at the end of your stuff. Looks like you've got everything kind of organized fairly well. Contrast and hardness, everything is labeled. Looks good there. And so now what we want to do, and your exposures look all right. Some of them are a little bright, but we'll get into that. So now we want to take a look at some of the compositions. So I'm looking in general. So when you're looking at composition, and that's really the arrangement of all of the elements, shadows, textures, objects. It's really what it's about is how you're seeing, how you're arranging things in the image. So there's the technical part, of course. Is it, did you put the light in the spot? The next thing is what you're doing with it, whether you are actually sort of organizing something in an interesting way that creates an image that is of interest. Is it dynamic? Is it a composition that is balanced? At the very least, is it sound? In other words, is it sort of a composition that is off balance and that is, perhaps difficult to look at, or it leads you in one direction and only one direction, that kind of stuff? Or is there a rhythm that's established? It looks like, from what I'm seeing, just in general, that you're kind of moving toward rhythms. You got a lot of repetition. Of course, they're all bottles, so it's hard not to do repetition. But you're sort of looking at, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, lots of repetitions. Dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. And that's a good thing. That's not to sort of poke at it. It's actually, this is a good observation. Creating these kinds of rhythms create this kind of a pattern. And patterns help audiences deal with abstraction. And so when we use pattern, we can get a little bit more freedom to push the sort of the image toward the world of abstraction, make it less about the object. So for every formal treatment that we use, for every bit of formal structure that we use, design, we're able to then drift farther away from having to rely on a subject. In this case, it's the bottles, and we were never trying to make photos of bottles. We were really trying to make images of light using the bottles in order to create images that were about the way that light was behaving. You're doing a good job here. A few of them could be a little bit more dynamic, but in most cases, I think even something like this has a lot of potential. I say potential because, this over here, while I can see why we have it there and it's a good idea, we needed something on this side to counterbalance it a little bit. Maybe if this was over just a little bit more, we would get the weight balancing a little bit better. You do have a very good rhythm going on vertically here with this, and this, and then this happening. You are kind of setting this. It's not quite in the middle. So if it was over just a little bit more, it would have offset this, this element here just a little bit better for you. Again, we'll get rid of this. We'll figure out just how we can remove that for you. so you won't have to deal with that later. So moving into intensity, this is where you're going to get the key light. You still start off with a key light. You never start off with two lights simultaneously. You start with a key light and then you decide where the fill is going to go. I really appreciate that you're including not just where the key light is, but also where the fill is. It's like you're writing a recipe, right? You're writing a map if to use another analogy, so that you can find your way back the next time you try, so that you'll know exactly how did I do this, and that way you'll be able to repeat it afterward. You could see the benefit to being able to using two lights. Something like this, which is very simple. You're doing a very simple sort of lighting study here. You got the key light over here, your main light source. Then you've got the fill kind of right onto the side here. That's just adding just that little bit of light over there. Excellent. That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing with the fill light. It just basically brings up the shadows just a little bit. Now, your compositions are really, really formal. You're just one object where you're bringing this down. There's nothing wrong with that. It can only take you so far. This is graphic, meaning that it's excellent if we were going to be adding text or body copy, if it was supposed to be for an advertisement or something like that. On its own, it's kind of one note. It's sort of like if I were on a piano, I'd just be tapping one of the keys, which can be beautiful, but it only goes so far for you. Here, when you're adding the second one, kind of interesting, we lost focus a little bit there. It would have been smart to have focused maybe on this back one. That would have worked because it would have given you this really cool line of focus on this bottle where it would have separated itself a little bit more from this front bottle. But it's a good idea what you're doing here. I like what I'm seeing. You're using that fill light very effectively. Temperature. You're coming right in very close. And this is where a lot of students start to sort of get away from composition. And it looks like you kind of are in that group. In other words, you're focusing quite a bit on all the controls. With direction, you had the one light. Intensity, now you have two lights. Temperature, you have the two lights. You have the control of the intensity and the color on the two lights. Now you have the camera also and the white balance on that. It's a lot to start to think about. You start to not think about other things. Sometimes it's composition. I'm seeing repetitive compositions here where you're probably thinking more about the camera, more about what the lighting is doing, and less about what's happening inside the camera through the lens. And you're trying to just solve the lighting thing. So that happens. You're not alone with that. Also, we're not getting a whole lot of variation here. This seems to be quite a bit of the same. I would have really wanted you to explore. See, we got temperature 35%, 3200, 3200. They're all the same. I would have rather you had explored the color temperatures rather than finding one and then just shooting all the way through it. I hope you didn't misunderstand the instructions on that. We'll get together and we can clarify that if you did misunderstand that. It doesn't seem like it because you have one in here that's different. So we'll find out what happened there, but we really wanted you to do multiple different settings on the color temperature. Contrast, that is where you got the reflector. You're doing a very good job here too, where you got the key light, and now you're kind of using the reflector as you might use a fill light, except rather than adding intensity, you're reflecting light into the same light. So you're not adding any more light. You're just gathering the light that's already there and moving it back into the scene. There's a big difference between that and adding a light. When you gather the light and move back into the scene, what you're really doing is you're adding more variation of tone rather than adding more brightness to the scene. That's the main difference. You're adding and modulating the various tones rather than adding more brightness to the scene. And so you're doing a good job here. There's a big difference between what you did here in those lighter areas over here than if you were to turn the light on. If you had a key light, a fill light over there, this would be a highlight right here. And you wouldn't have had this subtle shift across here the way it's giving it to you with the reflecting. The reflecting card is a very important tool, very valuable tool. You'll want to have one all the time now. Just use them. They don't just have to be white cards either. They can be different colors, red, blue, they could be silver, gold, and those colors will reflect into the scene if you're using color settings on your camera. So you can modify the reflector to a lot of different things, make them smaller, make them larger, really can do a lot of control there. Moving into hardness, which is about the shadow, the nature of the shadow. So as I mentioned in the beginning, when we're doing a lighting solution, we tend to be thinking about all of these 5 characteristics in the real sort of, we're doing some photography, we're running through them. In this series of experiments, we're highlighting each one of them individually. When you're working, you're dealing with all of them. You're dealing with the direction and intensity and the temperature and all of them as you're building your photograph. So hardness comes kind of somewhere in there. Sometimes you make the decision really early to diffuse the light source. Sometimes you wait till the end to decide, I'm going to diffuse that light source. So if you do address it, you're kind of almost addressing all 5 at the same time. Definitely direction first, but then after that, you are tackling all of them at the same time after that. Hardness is about the shadows, the nature of those shadows. So are they soft? Are they crisp on the edge? You can control that by either diffusing or leaving the light undisturbed. Nothing in between the light source and the object. You can even do this with the sun if you have a large scrim or a large sheet that is blocking the light from hitting your subject. They do it with portraiture outside, very large diffusers that are held up by assistants that are basically creating like an umbrella that makes beautiful studio-like lighting on locations. It's actually pretty neat. So yeah, your hardness looks like you're getting the idea, because I'm seeing soft shadows where we should be having soft shadows. Where you have a hard light, which is right here, we're getting the hard shadows. So you have a soft light coming from this direction, a hard light coming from this direction. It's why I wanted you to experiment with 2 different lights, one of them diffused, one of them not diffused, in some cases both diffused, so on and so forth. That way you'll have a good experience. This 5 characteristics project moves you through all of the elements, but it also will kind of move you through the experience as well. Because what we're doing is we're gathering knowledge and we're also accumulating the experience. So the knowledge plus experience helps you get to creativity. So hopefully by the end of this experiment, you can add those 2 things together, and now you can move forward with your lighting and be much more creative than you would have before it started. So that's what I have for you. You've done a really good job with this, other than the temperature one, which I think either something went wrong there, or you misunderstood, or maybe your images didn't turn out and you just wanted to get some up there. But we'll chat about that. That's the only one that I think maybe you want to kind of maybe resubmit a little bit. Your grade's not going to suffer too badly on that one. You will have a lower grade than you would have if you had the temperature just right, but I wouldn't freak out too much about it. You can certainly put that temperature one back together and resubmit it without any issue, and move your grade right up to the top again. So I will be issuing grades. I have these index cards for you guys, so I'll be putting that out for you. Otherwise, great job with the work. I look forward to seeing more of your photography, and we'll see you in the studio. All right. Bye-bye now.